the Nordic data center infrastructure market is growing at rapid rates. But is that creating a saturated market? Here to answer the question is industry veteran Michael Tobin OBE, also the founder of Tobin Ventures. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure.
Let's start off with that question. Is it a saturated market?
Well, I think, look, there's a lot of talk about why it's important to come to the Nordics, especially for the hyperscalers, because they see cheap power in particular. The Nordics has got a lot of land available. It's got plenty of power. It's got renewable sources. So all those things are positive. And for the hyperscalers, I think there is already getting to a sort of a saturation point, I think, in terms of how many of them have deployed here and what they physically can put here that is useful outside of the Nordics. So I think that's kind of getting saturated. On the retail side of things, it's less important to have mass scale power, and you really want to be where your local demographic is in the city centres. So I think that still is growing and needs more capacity. And I think when you go from there to the next phase of data centres, which is edge, then I think we're really going to see a different challenge in the Nordics, because the demographic gets very sparse outside the main cities, and I think they'll suffer for people not having the desire to invest for such small groups of individuals. Hopefully 5G will help there.
And can you give me some insights in the best kind of investments that investors should be looking into at the moment? Obviously, you've been in the industry for a while, so where would you put your money on?
Well, I think what we're seeing with all the large data center operators like Equinix and DigitalBridge, they're all doing off-balance sheet deals, joint venture deals with very, very cheap money. And the reason for that is that the market is pretty well covered, and there's a lot of capital being deployed, and there's a lot of infrastructure funds coming into the market for the first time, seeing data centers as an interesting asset class. So money is very, very cheap, and therefore that barrier to entry in building is gone. So I think if investors are looking to create value over and above simple infrastructure returns, then they've got to look at either emerging markets rather than mature markets, or they've got to be looking at these regional stories. So again, the next phase of what we'll see on the retail side is towns or other cities rather than the capitals, then towns, and then street corners, and that's obviously 5, 7 years away, 10 years away perhaps. But that's how it'll go. So if you want to make money in data centers, I think it's hard unless you go into those two markets.
And being a journalist in this industry, it comes across to me that there are data centers being built up, constructed every single day, almost. This is me I'm exaggerating, but you get the point. How will there be a time where this is going to put a stop to it? Is there going to just be a time where there's just no more space to build?
Well, I think the demand. So we're all doing more on the internet every day than we did the day before, right? So there's infinitely more data being created, and there's infinitely more data being passed around thanks to ever-increasing Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, that sort of thing. So all of that needs to live in a space. So data centers continue to be needed and will continue to be needed more in the future. The challenges come when you arrive at a point where power becomes incredibly difficult to obtain, or that you're just infringing on people's quality of life to build these data centers in the middle of a city. And you've got planning permission issues, you've got noise pollution, that sort of thing. So I think for those two things, it's going to be ever more difficult. But we'll go through this other wave of very, very hyper local edge, if you like, that's coming up soon.
And what's the one thing in the industry that you're looking forward to?
Driverless cars. I just want someone else to drive it for me, and we're only going to get that with this real combination of connectivity through 5G and the like. And also the really very, very local data centers that will allow all the cars to communicate with each other without sending everything back to Seattle again.
And earlier you spoke about the cold reality of investment. Can you just give us a brief recap of what you spoke about? Because I actually missed your session.
That's right. It was a little tongue-in-cheek because, as I say, there's lots of great attributes for the Nordics with regards to data centers, and absolutely it's an incredibly tech-savvy demographic. Typically most of the Nordics are in the top 10 of people using the internet, people sort of entrepreneurialism around the internet, even the e-government programs, all this sort of stuff. So all of that's incredibly valuable to the industry as a whole, the data center industry as a whole. And also the fact that you've got large swathes of land that the government is willing to allocate to data center builds. That's again a great thing. And obviously the renewable and cheap power and the added value of the cool temperatures, meaning that PUEs can remain quite low. All those things are great. The bad news, taxes, both company taxes and individual taxes, are very high. So getting high quality skills to operate in country is challenging. And then when you go further north, where for example Facebook are in Luleå, 6 months of nighttime doesn't really endear many people to want to go and live there. So it's really, really challenging to get the full benefits of all the list of things that I've just said, because of the other challenges of the geography. And I think also, it's not the best connected environment in the world. If you look at somewhere like Iceland, it's kind of one in, one out, that sort of thing, in terms of cables. Although what we've heard today, and what was very interesting to me, was the fact that we heard from a number of subsea cable operators today that there's a lot more fiber being connected into Scandinavia and into other parts of the Nordics, into the Baltics. And I think if it carries on like that, then that particular issue will be resolved.
And lastly, an event like Data Cloud Nordics, how is this important for the industry?
Well, look, we're getting more comfortable now with, in particular, Broad Group and the data cloud sort of program to be very much more regionalized. We have the Africa, we have sort of Europe, we have the Nordics, and they all face their particular challenges. So it's really useful, because location drives the people that it means most to the event. But secondly, you get a very focused approach on the specific issues of that region. So, the Monaco event is great, but you don't get this kind of focus on the issues and opportunities in the Nordics down there.
Thank you so much for speaking to me today.
You're welcome.
Don't forget you can follow Data Economy on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter and Instagram, and check out our website on www.data-economy.com.